Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Navigating Transition webinar hosted by Anchor Home. We are so excited to be here today and present very important information for transition youth and their families. My name is Obi Akparanta. I am the Chief Operating Officer here at Anchor Home, and I'm here with Isabel Cruz, our paralegal focused on HR and admissions, Latanya Shacklett, our Community Engagement Manager, and Sally McQueen, who you'll meet today to help us and guide us through the process. Isabel, Latanya, and I will cover these topics. We will cover transition planning. We'll cover DDA eligibility and the application process, selecting adult services and supports, financial planning and consideration, key resources and links, and we'll have a moderated question and answer session at the end. We have put together a lot of content to break down what is for many a very complex process. The content has been designed to be engaging. Please, if you have any questions or comments, please enter them in the chat, and we'll go through the chat at the end of the session for during the moderated Q&A session. I want to start by introducing ourselves. We are Anchor Home, and we are a modern organization located in Maryland, dedicated to providing premier supports to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our purpose as an organization is to transform lives by delivering exceptional supports to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in residential and community settings. Throughout the presentation, we're going to talk a lot about this and to talk about how our organization fits within the processes. I'm going to hand it over to Latanya Shacklett, who is going to take us through the transition planning process. Latanya? Latanya, if you're speaking, you might be on mute. I apologize. It looks like we may be having a little bit of technical difficulties.
Can you hear me?
Yep, Latanya, we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening. Transition planning is a journey from one point of life to another. But for individuals with developmental disabilities, this journey is a unique and diverse part of their life. Today, I invite you to explore the intricacies of transition planning and with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So as you see, it says transitioning planning is a document. It's a moving, living document that travels with you from age 14 until you graduate from high school. Next slide. So the transition plan should be dynamic and responsive to a person's evolving strengths, preferences, and interests. Developing a transition plan with disabilities involves careful consideration of various factors to ensure a smooth and successful transition from one stage of life to another. Here are some key components that you need to consider. You need to consider having a well-developed individual plan. As I said, it's a moving document and it goes with you. You need to review this plan constantly to ensure that their strengths, needs, and goals are accommodated. And accommodations. Remember, IEP is a document that grows. You can go to the next slide. So you always need to know who the key players are. It's going to be that student, DDA, it's going to be the family, your transition coordinator who is going to be guiding you through this process. It's going to be your coordinator of community services who you're going to be working with your last year of high school. And it's going to be the service providers like Anchor Home who's going to be there to support you. So now let me introduce you to Miss Sally McQueen.
All right, so like Latanya mentioned, we're going to talk about Sally McQueen. She is going to be kind of our individual we're following throughout this journey of her application process. Sally is currently 20 years old. She's going to be turning 21 on June 1st, 2024. And she's enrolled at Towson High School to get her certificate of completion at the end of May. She currently lives in Towson, Maryland with her mom and dad, and she's nervous about what her daytime routine will look like after high school. Her mom and dad are also nervous about whether Sally will receive the supports that build on top of the skills that she's learned while in high school, because that is important to maintaining those life skills. Sally is very eager to work, wants to make new friends, and wants to live independently from mom and dad. Sally responds very well to structure, and mom and dad want to make sure that Sally is well supported and happy with her service providers before they're unable to care for her. So now we're going to go back in time. We're going to go back in time to when Sally is 14 years old to follow her through her journey of applying for DDA services and the waivers and all the information that she needs on her journey to access adult services. So now we're going to talk about the DDA eligibility application process.
So the first question you would ask is, who is DDA? The Developmental Disabilities Administration is a fund. It funds the community-based services and support for people with developmental disabilities. Its primary role is to provide supports and services to individuals. These disabilities may include intellectual disability, autism, cerebral palsy, anything that's a qualifying diagnosis. So let's move on to see. So here we have the DDA timeline. So at age 14 kicks off your transition planning. 14, you complete your DDA application. Between 14 and 21, the DDA application is approved. You select your CCS once you receive your choice letter. At age 18, you apply for SSI benefits. At age 18, you will also apply for medical assistance. At age 20, you complete your waiver package, which usually starts in January, and that's that timeline that you will meet your CCS and start planning for your adult services. At age 21, you'll select services to include either the traditional model or self-direction. At age 21, you will meet and select your provider, and you will go into adult services. So let's look at the difference between adolescent supports versus adult supports. When you're in high school, school-based supports are an entitlement. In adult services, once you're eligible, it's not an entitlement. It's no longer an entitlement. It is on need-based only. You in high school, you use an IEP. In adult services, you use a PCP. They both outline your needs, your supports and services. In school, you have a transition coordinator, you have, the support your family. In adult services, you have a coordinator of community service, which we call a CCS, who supports the individual and families and help them access services. In school, you have your school day, Monday through Friday. In adult services, you work with your provider and your service coordinator to design your services that meet your needs. In high school, you are eligible for ABA services if you have autism. And if you're under the age of 21, you're also eligible for the autism waiver, which lasts through graduation. In adult services, you have access to behavioral supports. But the one thing is, in adult services, it's a lifelong support. So once you're eligible and you are qualifying for services and you are receiving services, it's throughout your lifetime. DDA eligibility. Developmental disability, DD means the individual has a developmental disability and is eligible for DDA waived services. This disability needed to manifest itself before the age of 22, and that is most likely to continue throughout your lifetime, resulting in an inability to live independently without external supports or regular assistance. Important eligibility considerations. Eligibility for DDA services does not guarantee funding. Like I said, it's not an entitlement, and you have to get it funding if the funding is available. Applicants must update DDA on any changes in circumstances or contact information so that they can always be able to get in contact with you. Once you approve once you have completed your application, has been submitted, you will receive an eligibility letter that if you're not approved, that you will be able to get a reconsideration, which means that you need to send in maybe additional documents to support the disability, or you have a right to appeal. So the DDA application process, you submit an application, you have supporting documents, you complete an interview, and then you will get a determination. The required documents needed is a psychological assessment, which cannot be more than 5 years old. You have to have adaptive scores, and it has to have a FSIQ. This is usually given to you when you have an IEP. You have to have the most recent IEP. You have to have any medical documents or additional assessments that you have that supports the diagnosis, and any other documents that you feel are pertinent to your child's eligibility. In DDA, there's 4 priority category classifications. Crisis resolution, which you will receive services if you're homeless, you're in danger, or you have parents who are not able to take care of you. Crisis prevention is either you require services, but you might need services within that year. Current request of services that you need, and you have, you're determined DD, but you need services maybe less than 3 years. Future needs is for usually children who are not going to need services and are not transitioning until they're 18. Transitioning youth are eligible to receive DDA services once they turn 21, between 21 to their 22nd birthday when they graduate from high school, and they automatically will get day services. So let's get an update from Sally.
So now that we've talked about the whole application process, let's go back to Sally and talk about where she is in her process. So Sally has been approved for DDA services. She submitted that application, she's done her interview, she's gotten all those steps completed. She has received her choice letter in the mail. So that means that Sally is ready to choose a coordination agency, and she's ready to begin exploring providers and services that are out there to look and see what she really wants. Next slide, please. So Sally has this choice of choosing a coordination agency. These are a few of the CCS agencies. This is not a comprehensive list. These are just a few that are out there. It really depends on what region you're in. Some agencies are in some regions while they're not in others. So it depends on the area of Maryland that you're living. But there is a list through DA's website, which we can send out in the chat for your reference as well. So now we're going to transition and talk about adult services to see what Sally is going to be looking for.
Thank you, Isabel. When selecting adult services, it's important for families and individuals to know that they have options. They have options to determine what services they want to receive, how they want to receive those services, and who's providing those services. Let's go back, let's catch up with Sally again and see where again is she in this timeline. At this point, Sally has completed her transition planning, or has done the kickoff for her transition planning. She's completed her DDA application. Her application has been approved, as Isabel stated, and she's got her choice letter. She's selected her CCS agency. She's applied for her SSI benefits at this point. She's applied for her medical assistance, and she is getting ready to submit her waiver packet. And so she's working on her waiver packet with her family and her CCS. And this packet is typically due the January of her graduation year. So we're at the point where we're about to start selecting services. So DDA has plenty of options, as I mentioned before. There are 2 adult waivers and there are 2 adult service delivery models. Let's start with the adult waivers. There's the community supports waiver and there's the community pathways waiver. Both of those waivers are similar, as they are helping participants live more independently in their homes and community. But the difference is that the community support waivers only provide meaningful day support, so that's like day program or CDS, and support services like nursing support services or personal support services. But the community pathways waiver is a little bit more extensive. It includes meaningful day and support services, but it also includes residential services. So families need to know that if there's a chance that your loved one could need residential services, you're going to want to make sure that they're applying for the community pathways waiver. It's the more extensive of the 2 waivers. When we look at service delivery models, there's 2 ways that the service can be delivered. There's the traditional route, which is where an agency like Anchor Home steps in and provides services to Sally. Or there's the self-directed model where Sally directs her services. And in the self-directed model, Sally's going to be responsible for things such as hiring her staff, things such as the budgeting for her services. And so the self-directed model comes with a little bit more administrative work for Sally and her family, as opposed to the traditional model. The traditional model, Sally and her family would rely on her provider, a provider like Anchor Home, and that provider would take the bulk of the administrative work. They would take the hiring, they would take, of course, the firing that may come with that. They'll take the budgeting and the annual and support in the annual budgeting process. I want families to know that all service providers are not the same. It's really important that families take the necessary steps and research to check out each service providers. It is not the same as the school system. You've got to really understand each and every provider. And it's important to also know that you don't have to stick to one. You can pick one provider for residential, you can pick another provider for daytime, you can pick another provider for personal support service, and so on and so forth. So let's punt it back to Sally. So let's get an update on where things are with Sally.
All right, so Sally has been approved for the Community Pathways waiver. She's decided that she wants to go the traditional service delivery model, and she's worked with her team to complete a universal provider application. Universal provider applications are accepted by most agencies, and it saves families time from completing multiple applications for different agencies, depending on their needs and what they're looking for. Sally at this point is requesting CDS and residential supports, and she has visited several providers with her family. Upon her visitation, she has applied and was accepted to Anchor Home for both residential and CDS services. So now let's take a look at what CDS services and residential services look like with Anchor Home.
All right, so meaningful daytime support. So before we look into CDS specifically, we're going to go a few steps higher. Want to know that the daytime supports, most families and clients that we meet are concerned about what is going to happen when the bus stop's coming, essentially. And so what that looks like in the daytime, I want you to know that you can go both either the traditional route or you can go down the self-directed route. During the one of the big caveats between the 2 differences, I would say, between the 2 service delivery routes is that Day Hab, which is a day program, is only offered in the traditional route. So what does that mean? Day Hab, day program, is a program that most resembles the classroom setting. It is only offered in the traditional route. But that's not the only daytime service that is available to individuals. There is supported employment, there's personal supports, there's community development services. The goal of our daytime services is to get folks engaged in their community as best as they can. And so we're going to dive in a little bit deeper on community development services, sometimes known as CDS, which is offered both in the traditional service delivery model as well as the self-directed service delivery model. One of the things that I want you to know is that while CDS is offered in both service delivery models, one of the things that you get in the traditional CDS model is much more socialization. Most traditional CDS programs are run in groups, in small groups. So those are groups that are typically anywhere between 1 to 4 individuals in that group, as opposed to self-directed services. Self-directed services, a lot of times the CDS is one-to-one. So individuals are, instead of being in a group and doing activities together in the community, a lot of times they're going to be one-on-one with their support staff. A list of services, we will share a list of other meaningful daytime services. You can see them at the bottom left in the chat as well. All right, let's get a bit, so we know that Sally selected CDS, so let's take a look at what the CDS look like at Anchor Home. So CDS is all about empowering our clients to engage in their community and to be active participants in their community. Our CDS is guided by their community support coaches. So these are employees of the service provider. These are employees of Anchor Home who help our clients each and every day, every step of the way, learning their community and working in their community, but also playing in their community. So what that means for us is that CDS at Anchor Home includes higher education, life skills, volunteerism, recreation, and employment. All of the clients that we support do not engage in all 5 of these areas all day of the week. What happens is that their community support coach and their community group really determine what are the best areas for them. And so some of this may look like some of our clients may be engaged in programming through the community college some days of the week. Some other times of the week, they may be learning life skills like cooking and cleaning. Some of the days of the week, they may be volunteering. Other parts of the day, they may be engaging in recreation. And for some folks, they may be engaging in employment. So I want to pivot over to Sally so we can get an idea of what Sally's day looks like at Anchor Home.
All right, so this is just a sample of what Sally's day could look like through our CDS program. Her day is going to start at 6:30 a.m. Sometimes it may be different. It depends, of course, on the day. But she's going to get up at 6:30 a.m. with support of her staff. That she's going to get up and ready to go for her community coach to pick her up at 7 a.m. The coach will also then pick up the rest of her group that is involved with her outings. And then at 8 a.m., they're out and about volunteering at a local animal shelter. They then go on to the YMCA to attend a yoga class and go swimming. And then at 12 o'clock, they're eating that packed lunch at the park and doing some exercise, maybe playing soccer, things like that. And then at 1:30, Sally and her community group are visiting Dave & Buster's to play some games and get things going, win some prizes maybe, things along those lines. And then really by 3 p.m., she's returned home. This is just an example of what it could look like. The schedule changes day to day. So it's not like she's going to be doing the same activities every single day. It's a delegative process where Sally is vocal and she's able to choose what she wants to participate in throughout the week with the rest of her group. Next slide, please. So these are examples of activities that Sally could be participating in throughout the week with her group. So we have things like packing food with movable feasts. We have painting in a pottery class, going to the library. Next slide, please. A few more pictures, like playing games, like I mentioned at Dave & Buster's, going to the National Aquarium, maybe going go-karting. It really depends on what the group is wanting to do that week. So these are just some examples of things that Sally could partake in throughout the rest of her time with her CDS group. So now let's transition into what residential looks like for Sally.
So now that we've got CDS out of the way, residential. So for folks that are looking for residential, DDA has various options. We're going to really focus on traditional residential group home support. And at Anchor Home, this means that our clients are living in immaculate modern homes in their community. This is about making sure that our clients have warm, inclusive, family-like environments and are supported by staff 24/7. This is where our clients are engaged in activities in their community, and they have a sense of belonging, and their overall well-being is looked after. It's important to know that the goal of our programs are to ensure that our clients live as independently as they can, as they're able, uh, and provide them the supports that are tailored to them. So it's not a one shoe fits all type of program. What you can expect, though, when we look at residential is that our clients are going to be living in a home. A home may look like an apartment complex to some. It may be a single family home to others, or it may be a townhome. They're living in small settings, so they may have anywhere between 2, 3, 4, typically roommates. What you can expect is that staffing again is there around the clock, so they're supervised and will not be left alone. And again, that their supports are tailored to their individual needs. So let's talk about inside residential at Anchor Home. So our strategy to residential is based on this 4-point solution: modern housing and furnishings. When you enter any of the homes here at Anchor Home, you'll notice that they're luxury homes. They're homes with high-end amenities, stainless steel appliances, granite counters. They're very clean, and we do that very intentionally. We focus on wraparound care. So this is ensuring that our nurse is involved in the process from the beginning through the end, through Sally's time here at Anchor Home. So we want to make sure that nurse knows Sally, knows what's going on in her medical life, and is able to consult with her doctors and other providers through her time at Anchor Home. Anchor Home also has a consulting dietitian, a dietitian who's accessible by Sally. So a dietitian who's able to help Sally and her staff make good dietary choices and be able to support when a doctor may recommend a change. Anchor Home also uses a lot of integrated care technology to make sure that Sally's staff is able to stay on top of Sally's care needs. So the technology would help the staff know that Sally may need support. Maybe Sally needs support bathing, or Sally may need support with medications. Sally takes her medications at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. All of those prompts are entered in the system so that Sally's care remains consistent. Intentional placement and seamless onboarding. That's really important to us here at Anchor Home. We have a thoughtful roommate selection, a thorough onboarding process. This is a huge decision for Sally. Sally interviewed with various provider agencies, so we want to make sure that her and her family can transition smoothly. We know that the transition is not just about Sally, but it's also about mom and dad. And so we want to make sure that we set the expectations with mom and dad and help guide mom and dad also through the process, because it may feel and look a little bit different now that Sally is living on her own or with her roommates. And then extensive staff training, employee experience. It's very important for us at Anchor Home that our team members, our employees are happy. We have a rigorous hiring process. We train our employees and we recognize our employees. Our employees are the folks that are going to be sitting with Sally and her roommates and providing her and her community group, and providing them with supports along the way. So it's important that they're well recognized and appreciated for their very hard work. This is Sally. These are a lot of what we've talked about today, are all the touch points that are centered around Sally to elevate her experience. So whether that's the dedicated nursing we've talked about, whether that's the individualized activities and the group activities, whether that's the focus on diet and nutrition, whether that's the community integration and activities, whether that is the highly trained staff, the technology we use, our emphasis of person-centered planning, our modern housing, but most importantly, also our family engagement. It's all designed to make sure that to elevate Sally's experience. I want to hone in on family engagement. At Anchor Home, we really believe in collaborating with families. Families Sally's mom and dad know Sally way before Sally would even be considering Anchor Home as a service provider. And so families are brought in on the process. Families are part of the transition process, of course, but when Sally selects her providers, we hear from family members. They really understand what their expectations are and how we can best support Sally aligned with maybe how Sally was supported at home so that it can mirror itself as much as possible. But again, all of the touch points that you see are about elevating Sally's experience. So let's take a moment and we're going to do a tour of Sally's home. Sally happens to live in Anchor Home's Pacific Home. And so we're going to pivot here to do a virtual walkthrough.
Apple Vacation.
All right. So as you see, Sally's home is really nice. It's a home that I'd love to live in. And we've done that really, really intentionally so that Sally and her roommates have a great living environment. That video I know is a little bit choppy. You can find that on our website, anchorhomeinc.com, for a much better display of that video. All right, let's get an update on Sally.
All right, so we're going to do a final kind of check-in on Sally to see what she's up to right now. She's currently living happily in her home, Pacific Home to be specific, with her two other housemates. She has her own bedroom and she's decorated it to her heart's desire with Anchor Home. She's also enjoying her daily community activities with her CDS group. And as part of her CDS activity, she's actually started taking classes at a local community college. She is looking for a job and she wants to work at a flower shop in the future. So that's something that she's looking forward to. And she's currently enjoying weekly dinner with mom and dad at PF Chang. So she is happily living in her new environment and has successfully transitioned into her adult services that she's currently receiving. That kind of wraps up Sally's story, but we do want to mention a few other topics that are important to keep in mind when going through the process of transitioning into services.
Thank you so much, Isabel, for that update on Sally. One of the questions that we hear a lot is how do the finances work? Who's paying? What does Sally and her family need to do to make sure that they have access to these services now and in the future? So let's go and let's dive into that. Here are a few tips regarding SSI, income, and expenses that Sally's going to need to know, Sally and her family. Participants will, as part of the process, need to apply for SSI and receive SSI payments And during that process, they'll choose a representative payee, a rep payee. And that person is essentially the person that's going to be helpful to the person in accounting for their money and their transaction to make sure that they're being used aligned with the state's requirement. Standard room and board is applied only for folks who are receiving residential services. So every month, out of Sally's SSI, she is paying a $375 fee. Now, this fee is not provider specific. So this fee is going to be paid no matter what to whatever provider that Sally chooses, whether it's Anchor Home or another provider. She must pay a $375 fee. That's a standard fee by DDA. In special circumstances, DDA may also add a contribution to care fee on top of the room and board fee, but this fee again is based on an individual's income. And then lastly, participants must always have less than $2,000 in their accounts to continue to maintain their eligibility. So this is going to be really, really important for Sally and her family to make sure that her accounts stay under $2,000. And this is any account where Sally's name is tied to. Now, the exception is with Maryland Able Account. Maryland Able Account is a program that allows individuals to save money without jeopardizing their state and federal benefits, such as SSI and Medicaid. This is a huge, huge, huge benefit. The Maryland Able Account program allows individuals to save up to $18,000 a year without jeopardizing benefits. And here at Anchor Home, this is one of the things that we've set up for most of our clients. This allows our clients to be able to save for a rainy day, or save for some of the larger expenses they may have. This may be individuals who may be looking to enroll in specific trade classes, or who are community college or go on vacation. It can be pulled from their Maryland Able accounts. Now, I'm going to identify some resources and links that will be important to note, and we'll share this in the chat after we're done. The first thing I'm going to shout out is the Post-Secondary Transition podcast. This podcast is hosted by Megan Smallwood, and Patrick Cadigan of Howard County Public Schools. It's an amazing resource to learn more about the transition process. A lot of what we've covered so far today has been high level. The process is very complicated. However, this podcast has done a really good job breaking up each and every aspect of this of the process. So to hear more information about anything that we discussed, you can tune into this podcast and learn more. So we'll share this at the end of the link, and then at the webinar. And then I'm going to share with you some important context at DDA. For folks that are in the Central Maryland region, Kevin Williams is the eligibility and determination supervisor. His contact information is here. And for folks that are in the Southern Maryland region, Cheryl is the eligibility director, and her contact information is here. We'll also share this in the chat a little bit later. And at this point, that concludes our presentation, and we're ready to move into the Q&A session. So please feel free to type out your questions, your comments. We'll read them out and then take it from there. So I see a number of people in the chat asking for the presentation slides. We will send the presentation and the recording after the event. Latanya, I think you might be speaking, and you're on mute.
I was just gonna verify Kevin Williams' email. I thought that's what it was, Kevin Williams 3.
No problem. I think that's something, thank you for that. I think that's something that can be addressed. We'll send out something after the event. Isabel, do you want to read out the questions, please?
Yeah. So we have a question. How easy would it be to transition from day program to residential, say for the first 10 years, day program, and then transition after 10 years to residential?
Tanya, do you want to take that question? Or I can take that question.
Depending on the waiver, it's kind of going to determine how easy the transition is. If initially the person is approved for the community pathways waiver, it's just a matter of the need being there. If they need it, and that's what you have to keep in mind. DDA services are need-based services. So if they've been in day program for 10 years and now they need housing and they have the community pathways waiver, then yes, it should be pretty seamless. If they have the community support waiver, then they would have to actually do another waiver application to be approved for the community pathways waiver before they could get residential services.
Yeah, great question.
All right, we have another question. Where are the homes located? Are they a part of Section 8 housing? And then is there a wait list for housing? Kind of all wrapped up into one.
Yep, so I'll take that one. Our homes currently are located in Baltimore County. They are not part of Section 8. The process typically, in terms of the wait list and the process, generally for folks that are interested, families and CCSs should reach out to Isabel in our office and we'll send her contact information out and review her application. Today, there is not a wait list. However, there may be one in the future. So please just continue to keep an eye on that. Reach out to Isabel, keep an eye on that. All right, thank you.
All right, we have another question. It's for the waivers, community supports versus pathways. How do you decide what you need and can you change between the waivers?
Latanya, do you want to take on the waiver question?
You're still on mute.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. It's about the waivers. So community supports versus community pathways. How do you decide what you need and can you change between the community supports and community pathways waivers?
So the decision would be, I mean, if I was looking at the waiver, then I would look at any point, is that youth going to need residential services? If they're going to require residential services, then you should go with the community's pathways waiver, because that's the waiver that encompasses everything. So any services the DDA has, the community pathways waiver is going to make you eligible for it. If you have a child and you say, well, no, I'm young and my child's not going to need any adult service, they're not going to need residential, because if something happens to me, there's someone else, then the community supports waiver would be the waiver to go. You can transition between one to the other. However, in an emergency case, if you are the person has a community supports waiver and they need residential, you need to keep in mind that you're going to have to go through that process of getting approved for that waiver.
Thank you.
All right. Next question. Are individuals currently enrolled in residential services automatically eligible for residential services as adults?
Are they under foster care? If they're in residential services in a group home?
No, they're part of the
autism.
autism waiver.
Okay. Not necessarily, because the autism waiver and the DDA waiver are two totally different waivers. So it would have to be a need. So if you are applying for services and it is stated that this person is going to need housing, then more than likely they're going to be moved to crisis resolution, and then they would automatically be getting a waiver.
All right.
So that's based on the category that the priority category that they get placed in.
All right, next question. How long does it take to be accepted into the day program at Anchor Home?
Isabel, take that question on.
I'll take that one. Well, it really depends. What we do as part of our application process, I can kind of talk through that for a second. What we do first is, of course, we want to, get to know what your child needs. We want to know like what they're looking for, how many hours of CDS they're looking for, if they're looking for the entire week, kind of any specifics that be relevant to them. We also would reach out to your CCS or community of services, and we would get some documents for them. So we would look for things like IEP, his PCP or her PCP, if that's being drafted, any HRST, which is a health risk screening tool, which assesses their medical needs, and then any other important documentation like psychological assessments, behavior plan, any of those documents that are relevant to the care of your child. And then from there, we make an initial decision. We decide, oh, we do have the capacity to support this person. Our staff is exceptional. We really have the best supports in place to support this individual. We'll reach out to you, and then we'll schedule an in-person initial assessment and a meet and greet. So what this looks like is we go over more services, what kind of CDS would look like with us, more in depth than just what we did with Sally, just to get more, nitty gritty in the details. And then of course we would ask a lot of questions because it's a chance for us to really get to know your child, because you know them the best. You're their parent, you're their guardian, you know what they need, and the best ways to support them. So we'll ask a lot of questions. And then from there, we're able to make a final decision of, yes, we can support this individual. We have a good placement for them. Or unfortunately, at this time, we don't have the best placement for them. So we'll have to hold off on services. So those are kind of the two options that we have available. From there, we'll, go through onboarding and everything. So it's not going to be a week time. Of course, it does really depend on, how quickly you're looking for services and everything along those lines. Generally, it would take a few weeks. I would say generally just for like onboarding through the entire admissions process, it really, really depends. It's a case by case scenario.
I wanted to add that in an emergency, we have also been able to move very quickly. As Latonya can speak to, when she was a CCS, we have been able to admit somebody in a week's time where there was a real emergency. So we would work with individuals where they are.
Thank you.
All right, let me go look at another question. Let's see. We have someone who says, I'm supporting a TY individual now, and we are not added to the waiver until January. Can you complete the waiver application before they're added to the waiver?
The waiver application will be completed, but you cannot submit it until they're added to the waiver.
All right. All right, what's the rejection rate for residential services?
I'll take that question. There's no particular rejection rate for residential services. Each case is reviewed individually. When we review a case for residential, what we're looking for is that are we as an organization, can we provide the best supports for the individual? And the environment that the individual, do we have an opening that would be a good fit for the individual? So we're looking at what the individual may need, what his or her preferences may be, what they like, what they dislike. Do they like loud noises? Do they not like not a lot of noises? So we're looking at all of those factors, and in addition to the other housemates that live in that home, to ensure that it's a good fit. So there's a lot of factors that go into an admissions decision. It's not simply a percentage, I'd say, but I'd encourage anybody who's considering Anchor Home, send a referral packet our way, and we'll take a look. And again, it's based on a case by case basis.
All right. We have another question. If this individual remembers correctly, Maryland Able is capped at 100,000 total contributions. Is that correct?
I want
I
to
answered that question, yes.
Okay.
The answer is
Yeah.
a 500,000 lifetime
Yeah.
contribution limit.
Great. Mhm. What percentage of your residential participants require 24/7 supports?
All of them. That's an easy one.
I'll also add something to that. I'll add that while most all of our participants require 24/7 support, some of our participants have alone time. So really the answer is it depends on what the plan says. If the plan says that they have some alone time, then that's built in. But if the plan does not, then we have to have a service, wraparound service all the time.
Yep.
All right. Are there participants in the day program that are not residents in the housing? Are there any transportation options to bring those participants to the day program, or do their parents/other family members have to bring them?
Great question. So I'll take that one on. Yes, there are participants in the day who are on our CDS and our day side that are not involved in the residential program. A lot of times, what we see in terms of transportation is going through activities. Anchor Home provides that transportation to get to and from the pickup. There's typically a pickup or drop off point to get to and from that pickup and drop off point. Sometimes families are involved in that, and sometimes folks elect to take mobility. So there's a few other options and ways to make that work, but typically it's either family or mobility that helps take individuals back and forth from the pickup and drop off point. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Are pets allowed in Anchor homes?
Yes, I'll take that
Great.
question. Yeah, sorry, I'll take that question. It depends. As you know, in these homes, they live with housemates. So if a housemate is not comfortable with an animal, then that's not something we would want to do. So it depends. If the housemates, are okay with bringing an animal in, they basically they have housemates, and so that's part of what they talk through with their potential roommates to see if they can bring an animal or not.
Thank you.
All right. How much can individuals interact with family?
Individuals can interact. I'll take that one. Individuals can interact with family as much or as little as they choose to. We encourage most of our individual folks, especially in residential program, if they'd like to call their family daily. So a lot of our individuals do call their families around that 7 o'clock hour. But again, that is it's person-centered. So that is absolutely up to them. So that's an arrangement that you are able to make with your loved one.
All right. If my son qualifies for the Pathways waiver, is it mandatory to be in residential right away? Basically, I'm not comfortable with him living away from me, right, as he transitions from high school to adult. My thoughts are to keep him at home at first with a day program, and then eventually, some years down the road, he would transition into residential.
No,
Take
he
that.
does not necessarily have to go into residential from the beginning. It's just working with your CCS, kind of letting her know what your needs are going to be so that you and she and your child can make the best choice of the waiver that's going to be best serve them. And if you're looking at that maybe he's going to be doing residential at some point, then the community pathways waiver would be the way to go. But he does not have to go right into residential.
All right. Do you have residential participants that are non-vocal communicators?
We do.
All right. Do you schedule mobility for parents if they are participating in CDS?
We do. They're the easy ones.
Right. Trying to see any other questions. Can parents or siblings visit their loved one in the residential home?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct. Let's see, are there any other questions that have been missed or any other last questions that folks may have?
How much can family visit?
That's a great question. And that very similar, similarly, that's going to be dependent on the arrangement between the loved one, the individual and their family. The individual is going to have, it's going to tend to have a good amount of programming. The goal is that the individual is going to be involved in the community most of the time, Monday through Friday. So that is something that family can visit every day if they feel that they want to do that, if that's necessary. It just really depends on the arrangement between family and the individual.
I'll just add to that. One of the things we find is at the very beginning, families may come every day, but as time goes on and the individuals get more comfortable and the families also get more comfortable with the placement, then sometimes we start to see that the visiting tailoring off a little bit to, once a week and, or every other day. So that's kind of what we have seen.
Yep.
Can parents pick up their child to come home for the weekend or vacation? Is this allowed at any time, or does it need to be approved by staff?
Yes, I'll take that one on. Family can pick up their loved one. At Anchor Home, we generally request about 24 hours, a minimum of about 24 hours of notice, so that staff can make adjustments. So typically, when an individual may go home, the staff that would be assigned to him may not be him or her may not be working that day. So we generally ask for about 24 hours of notice to make staffing arrangements.
Do residential participants have behavioral supports within their PCP?
Some do. So this is based on needs. So those that do need behavior supports work with their CCSs to request those behavior supports and may receive those behavior supports in a residential setting or anywhere else.
All right. Can loved ones come home on weekends?
Absolutely, they can.
All right. Do families have a say in the staff members that work with their child in the residential and day program?
Typically, in a traditional service model, generally the service provider is responsible for staffing. And if you decided to go and unfortunately, in the traditional service delivery model, the self-directed service delivery model would allow an individual and their family to have more control over staffing. But I would say that it's important to note that residential services are not offered in the self-directed service delivery model.
All right. Can you apply for DDA before age 14? I applied for my son. He is 12, and we haven't heard anything back from them. We applied in November.
So it typically takes, once you submit an application, it typically takes some time, and then you should meet with a CCS to complete your interview and your comprehensive assessment. Once that's done, they have 45 business days to submit that to DDA. Then DDA has another 45 to 90 business days to complete an application. But what I need you to keep in mind is that Central Maryland is the largest region, which means that they have a lot of applications. And the last time that I was there, there were 2 eligibility specialists that are reviewing all these applications. So in November, and because your child is 12, they are probably waiting, or they're probably not, as they probably looked and still are trying to get TYs, because this is TY time, unfortunately, and they have to get them approved and get their waivers in before they turn 21. So unless your child is having problems where they need to have support services, then you might have to wait a little while. But you can always place a call to DDA and ask where you are on the list.
All right. Since rumens have been taken into consideration for pets, do you screen to match them with pet lovers, or is it discussed between roommates after they meet and start living together?
I would take that one. Typically, that will be discussed in advance. So that is part of when we go through our admissions process. We're gathering information about an individual. That's some of the information that we're figuring out and discussing before and making an admissions decision.
All right. What background checks and criminal checks in place for staff members?
Ms. Holland, do you want to take this one? Oh, maybe I'll take it then. Yes, the state has there's a fingerprint and background check that is required for every staff member that works at Anchor Home or any other DDA provider agency. I gotcha. And so that is something that is covered again with Anchor Home or any other DDA provider agency.
I'd like to answer the question about the ABLE account. This is coming straight out of the Maryland ABLE account website. The current asset cap for lifetime contributions is $500,000. I will put a link to that, to the Maryland ABLE so that you can see that for yourself. That's what I was trying to do.
All right. Any other questions? How long is a training program for staff members? Also, what does the training look like?
Isabel,
I
you
was gonna
want to
say
kick
I
that
can
off?
answer this one. So I oversee staff training for pretty much all our staff members who work with our clients. So the first thing that they do is they actually do computer training with us, and computer training covers. It's extensive. It lasts about 3.5 to 4 hours, and it covers a series of modules that relate to bloodborne pathogens, falls, maintaining relationships, a bunch of material relevant to the position. And then from there, what we do is we also do a shadow day training with them. So they meet with our managers in the home. They meet the individuals they're going to be working with, and they really get a feel for what the home looks like. They meet other staff members they're going to be working with as well, just to really make sure they feel comfortable in the space and the clients feel comfortable with them. And then from there, we also do policies and procedures training with them, which takes another 3 hours, which goes more extensive and is a bit of a reminder and refresher for our staff members about all their policies, all our procedures, day in the life information, quality assurance information, things about incidents, any things that they need to know about reporting anything. All of it is summed up into one big training for them. And then from there, they also start working their shifts. And of course, all our managers are accessible. So if they have any questions or concerns, the managers are readily available for them.
A few things I'm going to throw into the training program is that training also is not just in the beginning. They're getting trained throughout their time, their employment. So they'll get specific training such as MANT training, which is all about how to respond to behaviors and maintain healthy relationships. They'll get additional policies and procedure trainings along the way. Another thing that we've done at Anchor Home is that we make our training accessible to our employees after they've already completed it. So we have an online portal that we call Anchor Academy, where our team members are able to log into the training site and retake and re-go over training that they may not be as familiar with. In addition to that, every one of the clients that we support has a training video that we make about them. So we produce a training about each and every one of the people that we support. And that training is what's used. We rely on that training as well to help folks get acquainted with the person they're going to support, the things that person may like, part of what they don't like, and have it in one place. And last piece of training is that nursing training. Our nurse trains our employees as well. So our nurse is highly involved in the training process. She'll do routine training. She'll jump in on house meetings and things along those lines. Thank you.
All right. How is food, shopping, planning, meal prep handled for residents? Do some residents prepare or shop for their own food? My child can do some simple meal prep, but would not likely be able to entirely plan and shop. Just wondering how meals are handled.
Great question. A lot of the folks that we support do need help with meal planning and cooking. I would say to just go back to one of the guiding principles, as our goal is to support folks at where they're at. So if individuals are at home already supporting and shopping and things along those lines, we'll want to continue to build on those life skills. So if they're involved in shopping at home, we want them to be involved in shopping when they transition into their group home. If they're able to make simple meals at home, as long as it's safe, we'll want them to be able to continue and maintain that and be able to make simple meals in their group home as well. So that is generally how it works. So I would say it's really tailored to the individuals, their abilities, what they've done and what some of their past experiences have been like and where they want to go. So each home operates a little bit differently when it comes to shopping.
Is there daily communication between the day program and the family?
That's again on a case by case. Generally, there's not a daily memo that goes out, kind of like that's generally not what you can expect in an adult setting. However, each of our clients and their needs are different, and families' expectations are different. And so, especially in the beginning, that's something we can accommodate, but it is not I guess it's not necessarily a rule. So that's something as part of the admissions process that we'd want to hear from you as a parent to understand and see if that's something that we could support you with.
All right. Are there video cameras in the home? Do they also have GPS tracking systems when in transit?
Great questions. In the home, for privacy concerns, we generally do not have video cameras in the home. The homes are generally spaces for our clients and to be supported by staff. Generally, so for privacy concerns, we typically do not have video cameras in homes. However, for vehicles, our vehicles are tracked by GPS. So, and staff managers do look at that. So the GPS systems, we do have a GPS system in place for vehicles.
We also have vehicle logs in each of the vehicles. So there's also a physical paper copy in case there's any questions.
That is true. All right.
All right, another question. Is it an inclusive community? Are there members of the LGBTQ plus community supported, preferred pronouns, views, etc.? My child uses they, them pronouns. Would they be supported by staff in the community?
Very great question. I want to remind you, go back to another core principle is that this is person-centered care. And so our goal is to support our clients where they're at. And so part of, again, the admissions process is we'll get to know their clients and their needs and their preferences and what they would like. And that's part of what we'll incorporate into our programming. So that would not be an issue whatsoever.
All right. Does the overnight staff typically sleep overnight or do they stay awake?
Very great question. Great question. So for folks wondering, the role is actually called that they're hired for is an awake overnight role, AON. So they are awake at night. So they're awake and alert through the night. That's an easy one. We'll give it another minute or two. I will take it here.
One other question. I noticed that there are key locks on the doors of the resident housing. Are their residents locked in their rooms at night?
No.
No.
I'll take that. I'll take that question. No, the residents are not locked in their rooms at night. The residents, the DDA requires that the residents have locks on their doors so that they can lock the
Lock
doors
their
if they
doors,
want
that's it.
privacy. So it's a DDA requirement that they're locked, and the residents can have privacy and lock themselves, unlock their doors if they want that. But no, they are not locked at night or at any time.
Are there certain time guests have to leave the houses?
The answer is yes. You know, again, because they're living together with housemates, those are decisions that are made at the house level. So if the housemates decide, you know, that at some time during the weekdays, you know, so that their programs are not impacted negatively in the mornings, or sometimes on the weekends, that this is the time that they'd like guests to leave, then it's a decision that's made at the house level.
If a roommate comes and tries to go in another roommate's room, how is that handled?
Ms. Hannah, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I'll take that. Yes. Again, some of the housemates become friends, and if they want to go into each other's rooms, that's a problem. But if somebody is going into another person's room uninvited and the person doesn't want that, you know, then that's something that we would definitely step in and have a conversation with the, you know, with that person, you know, who's doing that, and try to see that that does not happen. But most times, over time, you know, what we find is this housemates really become close. They become a family. And so they may go into each other's rooms because they want to. But again, like I said, if that's a problem, then it's something we will definitely address and have staff stay on top of.
Is it co-ed? I'm assuming the residents.
Yes, so currently our homes are not co-ed.
How long can they live together in these homes?
Great
I'll
question.
answer that. Yeah, I'll answer that. As long as they wish to. This is their home. The whole idea is that, you know, that they're not moved up and down. You know, these are their homes. And so, you know, as long as they want to live in those homes, you know, those homes are available for them to live in.
And we'll take one more question and then we'll wrap it up.
If two housemates don't have a lot in common, how is that handled?
I'll take that. This is part of what we do at the very beginning when we talked about making sure that we do have a good roommate selection. So we look at the preferences, the likes and dislikes, you know, and if there are any similarities before we make a decision about who wants to live with who. We also have them meet each other, you know, and make sure that both of them think they can live together before they move in together. And by doing all of that, what we have found is that they are getting along. You know, those roommate selections have worked, and things are going well. At Anchor Home, you know, this is very important to us. I mean, we have been known to open a brand new home because the individual that we were bringing in at the time would not be a good fit for another home where there was an opening. We have gone forward and opened new homes in those instances. So we want to make sure that, you know, this is, you know, this works for everybody.
Can I just add that, as Helen said earlier, that I used to be a CCS, and I actually had, her first client was one of my individuals. And I remember when the next client came in, they did an interview, they met, and she asked them, were they going to be able to live together before she made a decision? And that was probably this has been the only agency that I've ever known to do that. And I was a coordinator for 10 years. So I would like to say that that is the one thing that they pride themselves in. And that's a really good thing when you're looking for a provider.
All right. I want to thank everybody for their engagement. There's been lots of wonderful questions, but we don't want to stop the conversation today. You know, we covered so many topics and we heard from a lot of great questions from you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Here's our contact information. If you want to learn more, please visit our website at anchorhomeinc.com. Please feel free to reach out to us. If you call our corporate office, we can get you connected to Isabel, our absolutely wonderful Isabel, who will talk to you about the admissions process and get you more information as well. I have her email address here as well. We will throw that in the chat. We will make this presentation. I've seen many requests to make this presentation and recording available. We will do that. We will post it and share it out. Please feel free to share this with anybody that you believe can benefit from this presentation. Our goal is to help families and individuals really better understand the process and really understand how our organization fits in the process and how we're here to serve the people that we support. Again, I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday evening and a great weekend ahead. Thank you very much.